Thank you all for joining. This is Smartsheet 102, Mastering Forms and Automation. We're really going to dive into all the different settings that you can have in forms, as well as all the different automation types. We want to talk through all of those. I'm not going to spend too much time in this PowerPoint, but I want to go over, okay, the agenda today. So I always like to talk a little bit about logging in and resources because I do think that's important. I like to get that done at the beginning just so you have that information right away. We're going to go into form creation process. And then automation, detailed overview of automation just in general. And then we'll save some time for questions at the end. But Dina's going to be managing the chat mostly. And like she said, this is a smaller group today, so just feel free to unmute. I don't mind stopping me or anything to ask a question. They're always helpful to the presentation anyway. So feel free to do that if you need to. All right, so if you don't already know us, this is your Health Sciences Smartsheet team, me and Dina. I am a program specialist with finance and administration. I've been a Smartsheet system administrator for, I should really figure out the exact number of years at this point, but about 7 years now. So I've worked with, I might be familiar to most of you in the Smartsheet world anyway. But Dina?
Yeah, so I'm a senior business analyst with HSC Finance and Administration. So both Jillian and I are maybe more in the shared services kind of side of things. But I'm pretty sure I'm like, yeah, everyone is a familiar face or at least name. So so I'm glad to see you all here. And I will say as we're getting started, forms are kind of the most fun, in my opinion, in Smartsheet. I just have a lot of fun kind of creating forms. So this is always I think an exciting one for people to do.
I agree. I agree. And I think that forms is such a big part of Smartsheet. We've just kind of always are, using it in most processes. So, all right. So logging in and resources. So, Dina, if you don't mind putting in the single sign-on link into the chat. Most of you
Yes.
should already be familiar with this, but smartsheet.health.unm.edu, that is your main link for logging into Smartsheet. If you just go to smartsheet.com, it's going to loop you around to our single sign-on page anyway. It is good to bookmark our link, but make sure you go in and edit the link, and it should look exactly the way Dina sent it. You don't want any extra wording in there, or you'll run into some like log out system failure errors. Um, I wanted to let you know that this is what is included in our Smartsheet plan. We have access to a lot of different premium applications. We're not getting into that today. We do hope to hold trainings for all of our premium applications throughout the year. But just so you know, in case you don't already know, we do have access to Calendar app, which is a nicer looking, calendar application, because if you've used Smartsheet and you use the calendar view, you'll know that it's pretty limited. And Calendar app, it still might be limited just depending on what you're wanting to do, but it is a nicer view and there is more to do in there. Dynamic view, which a lot of you might be familiar with, data shuttle, data mesh, pivot app, work apps, live training, and control center. So if you have any questions about that, you can always reach out to me and Dina. We'll help you in any way we can, or we'll get you to someone who could help you. Resources. So most of you are probably already on our monthly newsletter. On our list serve, which we send out monthly newsletter. We try to send out outages, these types of trainings. So most of you are probably already on there. But if you have people in your area that you think would benefit from joining, send them our way. Core app skills, but Dina, the timeline for that already passed, right?
Yes, but we're always going to have more of these core app skills badge sprints in the future. We did close the registration yesterday. No.
Okay.
Well, on Monday was the last day. But if you're wanting to join us for this cohort, I can always open it and add you in there. So, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe just send us an email directly. But yeah, we do core app skills badge sprint, but we also do project management badge sprint. We try to host these types of trainings as often as we can manage, and anything that's helpful for everybody. And we're trying to do more trainings this year as well. And this falls right in line with that. We also host Smarty support sessions. That's with me and Dina. That's on a we hold space on Tuesday afternoons on a weekly basis. So you can just go right in there and just book a session with me or Dina. So if you just have something you're looking at, or a lot of the time people come in and tell us, hey, I built this. I just want to know if like I built it the way that you would build it. If I'm looking in the right direction, and that's totally fine. So just keep in mind that we do have that available to you. Um, I'll quickly show you guys whenever I hop into Smartsheet, I'll show you the resource portal. But all of this is linked onto our single sign-on page. So when you go to that link that Dina put in the chat, a dashboard pops up on the right. So if you just give it a little time before logging in, sometimes it's a little slower because everything's loading. But all of these resources will pop up on that dashboard. So that's where you would book the Smarty sessions, join the listserv, all of those things. So the resource portal is also on that link. We have Smartsheet University, which we utilize for the badge sprints, but you can always just go in there and browse. They have instructor-led trainings as well as self-paced trainings, so that's available to you. So it's a really helpful resource. Some trainings you have to pay for, but a lot of them are free, so you can definitely take advantage of that. We do have ProDesk sessions. You could book a one-on-one session with product experts from Smartsheet directly. So that's not here at the HSC. That's from Smartsheet. So, that's a really great resource as well. And then we have 24/7 tech support. So the phone number is right there. And that's a good resource too, because not everybody has that. So sometimes other plans, they have to just put in support tickets and wait. So it is nice that we have that tech support. All right, so we talked a bit about Smartsheet University Core Badge Sprint. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get right into form creation, unless I don't know if anyone has questions. I think Dina is manning the chat. So we are probably good there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hop out. Let me see what I can do here, because it's always a little bit weird. Sharing the right screen and all that. So just a second. All right, so everybody's seeing the screen, and does it look a decent size? Looks
Yes.
okay. Well, I zoomed in anyway, but
Yeah, I think zooming in probably helped, but
okay, good. All right, so I'm going to very quickly go into the resource, our Smartsheet at HSC dashboard. This is the dashboard that pops up whenever you log into Smartsheet. So when you go to that single sign-on page, that smartsheet.health.unm.edu, login information will be on the left side, but this will pop up on the right side very quickly. So you guys should be familiar with this because it should be popping up. So this is where you would join the user group. This is where you request a license, cancel, or transfer a license. If you have a question that you just want to go to us, that you want us to answer, you go here. This is where you'd book that Smarty support session. And this is just kind of a FERPA thing that we had to put in here. So if you're using Smartsheet for FERPA, you just want to click in here and kind of let us know, and so we can gather use cases. But we try to put information in here. These are the users in our user group. And this is the resource hub, so you can click in there and you can look through different premium application information, as well as there's a link to our support portal there, Smartsheet University, all that good stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get right into the training, but if you guys have any questions about any of, the resources that are available to you, definitely let us know. But we're going to go ahead and get right into the training. So I created this basic, I actually used a template from Smartsheet. This is a basic project request tracker sheet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into forms here on the upper left part of my screen. And then you'll see that I have the option to create a form or manage forms. I'm going to go into manage forms. So whenever you already have a form created, it's going to be under manage forms. You can see that there's one here already, but I'm going to create another form. And that's kind of the first thing that I wanted to let you guys know is you can have multiple forms per sheet. So let's say you have 4 different projects and you want 4 different forms because each form is going to be just a little bit different, but all the fields in the sheet and the form are basically the same, but you did want to put different information in that form. You can have multiple forms that feed into the same sheet. So I did want to let you guys know that. And I want to hover over form settings really quickly. So whenever you create a form, so there was already a form created on this template. We're going to walk through the actual creation, but it'll look like this. So this form is here. You could see it's inactive. When I click this little 3-dot menu, these are the different settings I have for my form. So I can go in and edit it. I can open the form. So that opens the actual live form. I can share the form. I can copy the URL. I can copy an embed code. So if I want the embed code to put, I don't know, on a dashboard or on a website somewhere, I can get that. I can duplicate a form, which is helpful because sometimes, like I said, maybe you have a project sheet that the form is slightly different. So you do want multiple forms, but it's maybe you spent a lot of time on it and it's mostly the same. So you can duplicate the form and then just go in and change the things that you need to change. So that is nice. So then you can go to properties here. This is more, you can look at the status and submissions and things like that. I thought it had an ID on it, but I guess it doesn't. But you can find this information if you really need it. You can activate and deactivate. So this is helpful, like with me and Dina with the Core App badge sprint, we will deactivate our form. So, because that link is out there for people, but we don't want people putting any more submissions in. So we will go ahead and deactivate it, and then you can delete the form. So I'm going to go ahead and create a form. And what we'll see happen is all of the fields that I had created in my sheet populate into my form automatically. So there isn't really any type of settings going on right now. I do recommend, I think it is a little bit of a case-by-case basis, but I do find it's easier to put the fields on your sheet first, and then to come and create your form. That is a personal preference, of course, but I do find that it is a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take out create a date. I don't really need that. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out. I'm going to go into created by, and you can see right here, whenever I click into the settings, it's showing field settings here. So you can tell that I'm clicked into this field. You can't really see it too much here, except there's that faint box around it, but you can see to the right here that it says that I'm in this field. I'm in this created by field. There's a contact list here. If I click in here, let's say I wanted to change this from a contact list to a different field type, I can do that. I'm not going to do that here, but I can do that here rather than, go back to the sheet and make that change. And then you can see it's pulling in the column name. So one of the main things that you'll probably do in a form is you'll put in custom labels. So my column name will remain the same, but I'm going to go ahead and put, let's see, I still wanted to say created by, but maybe I want to let them know that I want an email in here. And I guess I'll put like a colon in there. And I'm going to go ahead, and if I want, I can put something like in the help text. This is very much for your user to have a very clear example of what you need from them. So I'm going to say, please provide a UNM email address. So this is just some extra help text to give them so they know exactly what we're needing from them. There's a little bit of formatting that I can do here. I could add a link in here. So let's say I wanted to link this to, maybe there was like some type of help guide or something that I wanted to link to. I can put a URL in here. I'm going to make this a required field. I do want it required because I do want to be able to maybe contact them later. There's a few different options to display here. I will show you that in just a minute. Validation. So I do want to click email here. This just means that they have to give me an email. So if they go into my form and they like type in their name or something like that, it's going to say, hey, no, you got to give me a valid email. And I really want that because on the back end, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I want Smartsheet to recognize it as an email so I can send notifications to that person. So I'm going to go ahead and put email validation here. I don't need a default value because, people are going to, put their own email in there. So, in this one, I'm also going to make it required. I'm going to say, please provide the title of your request. You don't always have to put help text. You don't always have to put a custom label. You see how it just pulls from my column name. So that's fine for that, I think. I'm not going to put any type of validation, but you can see because it's a different column type, this is just a text number column type, you can see there's different validation. So I can do a number only. So maybe it's a, I don't know, maybe it's some type of ID number that's only a number, and I don't want them to put a bunch of wording in there. I don't want them to be writing in that field. I want my data pretty clean. So you can do a number, you could do a percentage, you could do email again. You could do a phone number. So if you want it to, look like a phone number like that, you can do that. In this case, I'm going to put no validation because they're just putting in a title. So I don't really need that. And I also don't need to change the, single line to multi-line or anything like that. And I don't need a default value here. What I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click into description. And I'm also going to make this required. I'm not going to put any help text in there because I think it's pretty straightforward. I want a description of the request. I also don't need a validation, but any type of validation on it. But I do want to change it from a single line text box to a multi-line text box. So I'm going to do that, and you can see it opens that up a little bit. I'm going to change it from 3 lines to 5 just because maybe my requests require a lot of information. They don't get cut off. Well, and Dina, maybe you can, I don't want to say this so confidently, but I don't think that it cuts you off. I think that you can write as much as you want. It's more the way that it's displayed. Is that right, Dina? I think so. I'm pretty sure
So
from what I've heard.
traditionally I say yes, but here's the nuance I think I learned recently.
Hmm.
So as we start typing in our description field, let's say if we did leave it as like 2 lines, as people continue to write more, it will create a scroll bar and it'll allow them to write more. The the nuance that I add in there is that in the overachievers group, we recently had someone complain that they had reached the maximum character limit on, and it was specific to a formula of 4,000 characters. So they had a formula in their sheet that was trying to exceed 4,000 characters, which was just outrageous. So I learned something new with that. So I don't know if there is a 4,000 character limit overall for a field. Um, I haven't run into that issue yet. So that's where I'm like, I'm not positive, but at least for a formula it is. That being said, um, I do recommend to adjust the size of this box, if you need that multi-line text box, because it encourages people to write more or write less depending on what you need. So, for something like this, a description, if we want a good, lengthy description, 5 lines is probably good. If we want something a lot more, then you can up it to 10 lines. If you're wanting people to stay concise, bring it down to 3 or 2. Um, that really kind of helps influence people on how much they should write. That being said, if they continue past those 3 lines or 5 lines, whatever you set it as, that scroll bar will appear and let them keep typing.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, if you know, it's kind of more, if you know that they're going to need to write a lot, make it bigger. If they're not going to need very much, you can make it smaller. But you do have that option. So just, keep that in mind. And all right, so I'm going to go down to, let's see, I'm gonna bring priority up. So you see if I can just kind of click and drag this up. I want priority under description. So I'm gonna go ahead and drag it up, and you can see I'm clicked into priority there. So I'm gonna go ahead and come to the settings. I'm gonna make it required, and I'm also gonna do this. So you can see this is a drop down list column type. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to maybe vertical radio buttons. I can do horizontal. I think I'm going to stick with vertical. And I don't need to set a default value, but one of the things I want to stop and show you here is you can create new fields from the form. What will happen on your sheet is they'll be added to the very end of your sheet, and then you'll have to go and move it where you want it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click new field, and then I'm going to put priority description. Priority description. I'm going to make this a text field. And my idea here is just to show you a little bit of how logic works in the form. So you can see it added it here into my fields. These are all the fields that are on my sheet but aren't currently on my form. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you just add the plus, it'll come to the bottom of your form. But I know where I want it, so I'm going to go ahead and drag it over here under priority. And I'm going to make this a multi-line text box. I'm going to make it required, but I'm also going to add logic to my form. So it's only going to be required when the priority is high. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click into priority here. And then over here in my field settings, I'm going to toggle over to logic. So you can see here it says field and then it says logic. I'm going to click over here. And I'm going to put add logic. And so it's going to say when priority is, and I'm going to say high. And then it says then show the following fields. So what I'm going to do is I only want the priority description to pop up if the priority is high. So now I'm going to click add. Now I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then I'm going to go back into my field logic. So then over here I'm going to say since your project is high priority, please leave more information below. I don't know. Something like that. So now whenever I click high there, it'll show that question. But if I click low or medium, it will not show that question. So that's how you can build some logic into your form. So next I'm going to go over to department. I am going to make that required as well. I don't think I need any, labels or help text in there, but maybe I do want it to be vertical radio buttons because maybe I just like the look of that a little bit better. Or actually, you know what? I'll just leave this as a drop down so we have that in the form. And I'm going to take out assigned to because that's something that I do on the back end on my sheet, so I don't need that. So I'm going to use this little trash can icon here. And then I'm also going to move, oh, why does it have start date? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take out start date. I'm going to take out end date for now. And what I'm going to do is, I think create a date is meant to be my due date. I'm going to move create a date back over here under priority, and I'm going to change the label to due date. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe change that over here to, let's see, or maybe I want a new field. Let's go ahead and change it, and then I'll show you something different in the sheet. So I'm going to change this to due date. I've realized I don't have a due date column in here, and I do want that. So again, you could change it here rather than in the sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the field type, and I'm going to change that to a date, and I do want to restrict to dates only. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to put the due date. I do want it to be required. I don't need a default value, and I don't really need logic. I want the due date regardless of their priority. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into status here. And this one I'm not going to make required. I'm actually going to make hidden. So this is something that's going to come through with the form, but I do want it to be hidden, and I'm going to go ahead and select a default value, which is not started. So what this allows is only the information in this form is going to get fed onto your sheet. So if I didn't add this status column in a hidden field, then it would just be blank. But I don't want it to come through as blank. I want it to come through as not started so I can, sort my sheet on the back end. So I'm going to put it hidden so the user won't see it. They're not selecting the status of the project, but it will come through on my sheet as not started because I did select a default value here. So now I'm going to go ahead and click save. And then right up here next to share form is open form. So I'm going to go ahead and open it and we'll take a look at what we got so far and see if everything's working. So I have created by, I have title of my request here. And I'm gonna go ahead and click hi, see if that's working. So it is working. And if I go back to medium or low, you can see it's not required on the form because I only want it to be required if it is high priority. And then I have due date here. They can toggle over to whatever the due date is. They could also just type in here. And then you could see what the drop down looks like here. And I can go ahead and, click my department. And then I have this turned on and we're going to take a look at that now. But I'm going to send a copy of my responses. So this just sends an exact copy of what I'm submitting through the form just for my own records. So I could put my email in here and then when I click submit, I'll receive that copy. I'm going to go ahead and X out of this and I'm going to go up to, and we're going to kind of go back in here in a minute to do a couple of things more. But I do want to toggle over from form over to settings. So these are going to be your form's general settings. So we can see that the theme and brand, we have a few different options for, viewing of this form. We have our standard vertical, we have side by side, and then we have plain. I'm going to switch it to side by side just for the sake of kind of showing. Show Smartsheet branding on the form footer. I'm going to go ahead and toggle that off. I don't really need that, here. I don't always care, but I am going to take it off here. And then we have a little bit of security options here. So I can require Smartsheet login to access the form. All of HSC does have access to Smartsheet. So if you do need that extra security and you do want them to log in, you can do that. I will say most people don't really do that with forms just because forms are usually an easier way to gather information from people and not and not making them log into your Smartsheet. So a lot of people don't want to do that, but it is an option. So if you do want that added security, you can do that. You can restrict form access to people in my account via the safe sharing list. This is, and Dina, I don't know if you want to talk about this a little bit more, but we don't really have a safe sharing list in our account right now. So I don't think that this would be anything that we would need to add in.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
right now, that would just kind of be restricted to HSC medical group emails, kind of things like that. So this is good if you do require that the form be submitted by someone internal and you feel that your form may be accessed by people who are external. I mean, I don't think I've ever restricted a form necessarily because I can also go into a sheet and see if someone were to submit it externally, I can go and delete the entry. They're not, it's not really getting sensitive information from us. It's more of people submitting their information to us. So I usually don't need to restrict any settings for security on forms at least. So, similarly, like spam, I've I've never gotten any spam on a form, but also I usually don't publish my forms necessarily on an external website. So there's that as well. Um,
Yeah.
so those would be use cases for those.
Yeah. And our account is pretty open right now. That's why it's currently not HIPAA compliant. If that changes in the future, then I could see us using this option for the safe sharing list a little bit more. But right now, we can use our Smartsheet with external people. That's how it's set up currently. So we don't really have a safe sharing list, so you wouldn't really need that. And then again, like Dina said, I've never really gotten spam, but you can use this CAPTCHA option. I believe it's kind of similar to, is it the one where it makes you choose pictures or something? It's like through Google, I think. Yeah, I think it's to make sure you're
Yeah,
not a bot or
I
something.
I believe so. And sometimes the captcha is just like the checkbox that somehow a computer can't do. but humans can. I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, again, I usually don't um have people do that. And Kelly did bring up something really good in the chat, is that yeah, so she maybe will sometimes use that top option of requiring a Smartsheet login to access the form. Um, because it's really helpful when she creates the column that's the created by column that then helps her to see who created that request, because sometimes people don't put in the correct email, or they'll skip things if they're not required. So yeah, that is helpful on that one. Um,
Yeah.
and kind of to look at it both ways, sometimes if people are required to log in, sometimes they don't and just close it. So
Yeah.
so use it where it's wise. And yeah, I mean, otherwise, usually for forms and security, it's usually pretty fine.
Yeah. All right. So there's those security options that are available to you if you do need them. The next thing is form submission. So this, says what should happen after the form is submitted. So generally, it will display a confirmation message and it'll say success. We've captured your response. You can change that. So if you want it to say something like, maybe it's like a ticketing system. You want to say thank you. We received your request. Please allow 3 to 5 business days for a response or something. You can add that here and that'll just pop up on the window after they click submit. It'll have that little message there for them. So if you want to say something like send them to your general email box and give them information, you can add all that wording in here. A couple different options that you have is reload the form for another entry. So sometimes, that might be necessary. Maybe it's, something, I don't know, like inventory where you need the form to reload and they're putting in all the different items that they own or something. So maybe you want it to just reload the form again so they can submit again and again, and again. You could also send the user to a link. So let's say for us, maybe you join the user group through our form, and then we want to send you to our dashboard as soon as you submit. So maybe we want to, send them to a Smartsheet dashboard. You can do that, or maybe they have a request they're putting through, and then you want to send them to your UNM email. Not UNM email, UNM website, something like that. Any URL you want to send them to, you can do that here. That is an option. One of the ones that I always come in and change is new submission should appear on the bottom of the sheet or the top of the sheet. I always change it to the top of the sheet because sometimes I find that new submissions just get lost if I don't do that. So I there's been many times where I've helped people and they're telling me, I don't know what's going on. I set up my form and, I don't see any of the submissions. And then I log in with them and we scroll down to the very bottom of the sheet. There's a lot of blank rows. And then, all of their submissions are down at the very bottom for whatever reason. So I really recommend putting your submissions to go to the top of the sheet. So that button that was on the form that allowed me to send a copy of the submission to myself is also a setting on the back end. So um, I can have this checked or I can have it unchecked. I have it checked right now, so that's why it's popping up there and allowing me to send responses to myself. But maybe I want to build an automation on the back end and I don't want them to send a response to themselves. I could take that off and you can see it takes the message off with it because I can adjust that message a bit. But maybe I want to build that on the back end. I don't want to give them the option to send it to themselves. Maybe I want a full automation that sends them information on the back end. So I can go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off and I'm going to click save. I'm going to click open my form again, and then we'll see now it's side by side. So you could see, here's that my title here and stuff, and then you could see there's no more Smartsheet branding, and now I don't have the option to send responses to myself. So the only other thing that I wanted to go into, which I didn't really go into, is these form elements. One that is very helpful is file upload. So I can have them upload files directly onto the form, and then it'll go over into my sheet. So maybe I have files related to their project request. So I can put that here. I'm not going to make it required, but I am going to go ahead and add it in there. We have dividers, so you can see here it's just like a little line here. You know, when your forms get a little bit longer and you want to divide it into sections, you know, the dividers are really helpful. So, you know, I will go ahead and I'll just throw it in there just for the sake of looking at it. And then you can put a heading and description. This is also more just to kind of break out your form. So maybe you know, you need like a heading and then a description on one section, and then, you know, you can add this in as many times as you want. So, you know, priority here in another section. I don't have use for it in this, but you know, you can add in those headings to break out your form. And then also over here on the title, the request tracker, you can also please use this form to submit any um, I'll just put project requests, and then, you know, I could say, please see instructions for submission below. And then I could put something like, click here for instructions. And then I'm gonna go ahead and hyperlink that. I don't know, I'm just gonna put smartsheet.health.unm.edu, save, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at this. So now there's a little bit of more of a description here, and then I can, you know, add a link here. Maybe I have a lot of forms where we turned a PDF fillable form into a Smartsheet form, and we wrote out detailed instructions so people know how to submit through it. So, you know, then they can go ahead and click here, and it's not, my link is not going to work, but you know, you can add a link here. We do that pretty often. The only other thing I was going to show is that you can see that there's this format background here. You have a little bit of options with formatting, so I do want to show that. So the automatic color will be this teal, you know, HSC color. You can use an image. I just want to remind you to be mindful of branding. You know, UNM branding. You can go to brand.unm.com to look at colors, to look at their requirements. They definitely don't want you using anything that goes against, you know, UNM branding. So just be very mindful of that, because if someone comes across your form and they think it does not follow guidelines, they will call you out. So just keep that in mind. But it is nice to have it as an option. All
Yeah.
right. And then you could also change the logo. So you can see I'm hovering over. So maybe you want it to be specific to your department. You can change the logo. But again, keep in mind the color scheme and everything, because like this white logo, it does need to go with the teal in the background and that sort of thing. So all of those guidelines should be on brand.unm.com. So yeah, just keep that all in mind.
Okay. And I am going to point out that technically we have 3 minutes left for our scheduled time. So Jillian and I could kind of keep going for those who are able to stay on. But I do know that, so Marcia had a question, which really gets into automations. So, you know, we saw here in the form settings how we can go and have people automatically get an email response. But if we have, let's say, a column that is generating a ticket ID number, um, can you show us how you would put that in an automation so that way people would receive like a confirmation email that includes other fields that they did not enter here on the form?
Yeah, I'm sorry, put a ticketing ID number into like a form.
Yes. So yeah, so the ticketing
Okay.
ID would be something like the automatically created column.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'm so sorry. I don't know why I was thinking that we had the full hour. So we'll
we
make sure.
usually do.
Yeah,
So
well, I know. I think this is the first time we did this, and I it completely spaced. So I'm really sorry. But I'll do that really quickly. So I'm back in my sheet. I'm gonna go ahead and right click, insert column to the left, I guess. And then I'm gonna select, where is it? Auto number. So my prefix, I'm just gonna go ahead and put like HSC. I'm gonna change my numerical places. So it's like zero, just to make it look a little nicer. Um, and then you can see that now my requests will have that as they come through. And then what I can do in automation here is when I go into manage automation and workflows, I mean, I have 2 minutes. I'll very briefly talk about automations, I guess. So I can go in here and I can say when rows are added, I can do changed or when a date is reached, but I'll do added. So when anything kind of comes through, I'll alert someone. An alert is just a general email. So I'll go ahead and click alert someone. And I don't want to send to specific people. I want it to pull from the actual people in my sheet. So I'm going to go from send to specific people to send to contacts in a cell. And then you can see my different column types. So I have created by and I have assigned to. I'm going to go ahead and do created by because I want that person to get their ticket. And then down here is the customized message. So I can send from Smartsheet automation, organization, or triggering user. This is really just the email that's going out to people and kind of how that's displayed there. So the subject is just, the subject of my email here. I'll put request confirmation and then please allow 1 to 3 business days for response or something like that. That's just the body of my email that's going to go out generally to each person. Really what's important is what the message includes down here, which is links to the sheet and all fields. So that's all the fields in your sheet that will populate on this message if I don't switch it to link to sheets and specific fields. So maybe I only want them to, maybe I only want that row ID, the request, and maybe like description. Maybe I want who it's assigned to. So when I assign it to someone, I want them to kind of receive that. And I could also have the option to do message only. But I do want them to have some details from their request. So now whenever they receive that email, as soon as their row is submitted, they will receive that with the ticket number, the row ID that we just created. All right, let's see.
So I have a quick follow-up question if I can on that, Jill.
Yeah.
So the way you captured it in that automation by doing it from that drop-down list, that's different than what I've seen where they've put it in field name in brackets in the body of the email. Can you also show that, how it would be put in the body of the email real quick?
Yeah, definitely. So what I like to do is I like to come in here and grab my exact column name. So it's called row ID. So easy enough to remember, but I'll go ahead and copy it here. And then what I'll do is I'm going to go into manage automations and then I'm going to go into this workflow. And then what we'll do is we'll add the 2 squiggly brackets, row ID, and then 2 squiggly brackets. Row ID is, I'm just going to put being worked on. And then so what that will do is this is a very general message. It's a generic message that's going to go out to everybody. So we do want it generic, but what the squiggly brackets do is it pulls their row ID from their exact request into the body of this email. So if I were to submit from the form and my row ID is HSC 0013, something like that, then it would put that into the body of the email. And you can do that with any field. So maybe you want to say, hello Dina, and that Dina put her name into the field. You can come in here and do that with any of these fields to put into the body of the email. So I can do created by, and it would say hello, Harley Sterling, or whatever, but the next person would have their name. So
Yeah.
it wouldn't have to be
Awesome.
extremely generic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I've done some that are very personalized that is like, hello, Harley Sterling, your request for new computer has been assigned as HSE 001. It has been assigned to, Kai, I don't know how to say that. Okay. Currently it is in progress, something like that. So I've made super customized ones. And then I've also just gone very generic where it's like, please see the information below for your request. Where it just kind of depends on the use case. Um,
Yeah, I think that
so
if you're gonna go that route, like Dina said, you can definitely add all of that into the body of the email. And then that's when you would maybe switch this over to message only because it is
mhm.
pulling in that data from their submission. So you wouldn't really need to put any fields at the bottom because as you guys might already know, the fields will be there at the bottom of the email, kind of in like a vertical kind of format. But if you're going to really customize it like the way Dina just said, then you can just add that all in here with your squiggly brackets, and then you could change it to message only.
And I will say an advantage of doing it that way, if you did have, okay, those 4 fields that I wanted to include, um, there, if you notice that right now it's set to links to sheet and specific fields. So when someone receives that request, there's also going to be like a hyperlink on there that will send them to the sheet. If they don't have access to the sheet, they can't get in. But if you're the sheet owner, you might get requests for people to get in when they're like, oh, I don't have access, request access. And that can just sometimes be annoying. Um, because I mean, I know Jillian and I have gotten those ones and most of the time they're fine. But sometimes I'm like, you're requesting access, but like this is sensitive data. I can't share it with you. Um, so that's where it just depends. So many times it's not unusual to kind of go with the message only because then there is no link to try and get into the sheet and it keeps it a little more private. If people are submitting a lot of information though, I do recommend just listing out the specific fields because that may display better than message only. So it just kind of goes based on your preference and the use case.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that what we'll probably have to do is send out a training for automations because I totally thought I was doing great on time. But what I will do is I am available to hang out. So if anyone has a question about approval requests, update requests, wants to see anything in automation, please hang out and let me know, and I'm happy to go over those things with you. But otherwise, I know this is kind of what our scheduled time, was set at. So, anyone that needs to go is, can hop off. But if you do want to know anything right now about automations, I gonna hang out.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so I think we'll have another session for automations, but if anyone has questions, whether on forms, automations, or something else, we can totally help you at this time. I know. Usually we schedule it for the full hour. And this time we were like, it's forms. We just need 45 minutes. And that was like a month ago when we were deciding that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So we'll do a follow-up automations one.
Then for the automations, or I think it would be an automation. For instance, like we send a bunch of emails with attachments. Is there some form of like automation that would help us do that? And
Yes.
it can be like a later discussion or something else in a different training, but
So this is another nuance that I learned, is that if you want to include attachments, so, and Julian would kind of show you, you can go and select that. But what I have found is that for some reason, it's not sending attachments unless I do it as an update request, which is really weird because it should work doing something like this where the action is to alert someone. But what I found is that I need to send it as like an update request in order for it to include the attachments, which doesn't totally make sense. Um, but I looked into it. So for now, I'd say it's probably a safe bet to include in order to have the action be an update request in order to see those attachments, which is just, I don't know, it's strange. That one's been bothering me the past few weeks.
And that is a little bit strange because I thought that if it was like upon submission, I thought that it would show. Um,
And maybe I know when I was doing it, it was based on document generator, and so then it was a later automation because it had to be after a document was generated.
That's strange. Yeah. Ashley, what is it that you would want to be doing? Are you thinking like there would be a submission through a form, people would put in files, and then those files would need to go to somebody? Is that kind of what you were thinking?
So like, yes, for one example, but like a whole nother example would be maybe you have like a sheet, like instead of in place of an Excel file that had attachments that you would eventually send out as emails like individually. Is there a way that Smartsheet can send like a blanket email and attach the file for you instead of me like send this to Jillian with this file, send this to, and so forth?
Yeah, yeah. So the way that the files are housed in Smartsheet is you can see here like this attachment is here on this specific row. Really, if you were doing something like that, and if I'm understanding it correctly, and Dina, you can, if you're interpreting it different, feel free to hop in. But like, let's say each of these were, a different person, and they each had their own file that would need to go to them. You should be able to kind of just, create an automation that sends them that file, but you would have to go and like preload all those files in, and then you would send it to them based on maybe a trigger, or you can like do a manual send. But that's kind of what Dean was saying. I don't know if I would think that they're sending. I can do kind of like a send to Dina real quick and see how that comes through. But and I have had people do this in the past where they kind of preload. They've done it with timesheets. So they had each person listed out, and then they had like a general template of a timesheet on each row, and then they have a checkbox that triggers that automation to go out to that person, and then they receive their document. But so you could do it that way. It would I think depending on the situation, you would have to see if it was worth it and worth your time to be in there like preloading those documents, or if it just makes sense to email them, or yeah.
Yeah, and if you want me to share my screen real quick, I can show how that came across on my side.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, so when I received that email, I opened it up. And so again, this was where Jillian just went and hit send on that row. So she right-clicked, went to send, put my email in there. So when she did that, I do see the attachment, which is right here. And so as a good FYI for those who don't know, any attachments are linked here. They're not literally attached to the email, so they would need to click on the link, which will download that attachment. So, but yeah, so I do see that information. It did include all the columns because that was how it was sent. So anyways, but I do see the attachment in that case. And if you had multiple attachments, they would just be listed out here.
Yeah, and I submitted through the form as well, and I also received the attachment. But I know what Dina's talking about is that I think sometimes with alerts it doesn't include the attachment. Maybe they fixed it. Maybe that's why we're getting it. But I know in the past, it was only sending with update requests and things like that. So that's definitely something that you would just want to test, and just with your own email or with a few people in your department, and see how it's sending out. And if it's sending properly, then you can move forward with going live with your project. But attachments can be a little tricky sometimes, just depending on what you're trying to do. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For any of like the documents that you're sharing, like even the instructions in your form, are you guys sharing that to like a SharePoint site, or how are you guys setting that up in the backend?
Yeah, so with Smartsheet, you have a lot of options to link, link stuff, right? And then especially like on dashboards, which we didn't really get into, you can't upload a file directly onto the form. So as you saw, I was linking it. I do use OneDrive because that's what the HSC asks us to use, but the issue with that is that IT does have our OneDrive locked down. So, I have it linked to the document in OneDrive, but IT requires them to log in to view that document. So that is kind of unfortunate. It wasn't always like that, but that is just kind of what we have to do now. So, I mean, if you have the link, you know, maybe you have the link, or maybe you have like a PDF linked on a website somewhere, you can always grab that link and then link it to your Smartsheet. Maybe that's a little bit easier. But if it's just a general document that you have in your OneDrive that you have to link to your Smartsheet and that's the only use for it, then yeah, you would have to use like OneDrive or whatever cloud-based system you're currently using.
Okay, thank you. I usually have to, like, if I'm using something in Teams, I'll go in and then just adjust the like the privacy settings on it to where they're not having to, or just like view whatever I need to adjust on their side. I thought there was maybe another workaround, but that sounds like something we're already doing, so thank you.
Yeah, same because I think our OneDrive, it's whenever you first go in there and add a document, I think it's pretty restricted. And then you do have a couple of options to make it less restrictive, but even then our less restrictive option is still people within health sciences. So it still requires that login, unfortunately, but that is the way that IT has it